episode 45 of the Treatment Room Secrets podcast. What a fun pleasure I have today. Dr. Scott Michaels, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and nice meeting you. And I'm glad we could be together today for a little time.
This is your fault, but we have to start with steroids.
Oh gosh!
Because you taught me something. You said, so it's a thing in the medicine world. If you don't know an answer to a question, you pick steroids.
Right. So we have to take a lot of testing to become physicians.
Yeah.
And pharmacology is a big part of our education. And I always went with the old acumen that if I didn't know the answer and steroid was presented as an answer, it's probably the answer. And it is usually. So I just had that experience. I have to take continuing education. And I was suffering. I'm going, oh, there's steroid. My friend, just check that off. Because steroid in medicine is one of the miracle things that we've come up with that actually really helps people and has great utility, just like antibiotics and some of the other great things. And things are just progressing so rapidly now, but it's time tested and all that.
So when did we start using steroids?
Ooh, that's a good question.
In a miraculous way.
I would have to look that up for dates and times. I would say probably the 40s or 30s probably is when it came around. But that would be something I'd have to just look up, and I'm not sure, but I'm guessing now.
Yeah. And
I would say somewhere around there because I know that it was in utilization or they utilized that during the 60s is my, I'm not that old, but I don't really remember the 60s, but then again, not many people do.
So what are steroids?
So steroids are compounds that we actually make in the body, and they have several different functions. There's lots of functions for steroid. One of them is they have an anti-inflammatory effect. So that's their utility in medicine a lot. They also decrease the immunological response, and that could be good or bad. So it's good in the light of you have an autoimmune disease, and you might want to temper the immunological response because self is attacking self at that point. So you might want to buffer the immunological response. For instance, if you have disease process called immune thrombocytopenia, it's when basically your platelets are being attacked by your own body. You might want to give some steroids so that way the person doesn't bleed to death. And what's the connection? Well, platelets are responsible or helpful in the clotting mechanisms. So, and if you have antibodies against them, it destroys them. They're sequestered in your spleen, and the spleen enlarges, but the steroid will actually tamper that response down.
So why, I'm from the sports world. I grew up in the sports world. So anytime steroids came up, and it's always in the context of performance enhancers.
Those would be androgens. So those are different. There's different types of steroids. They're in different groups. There's mineral corticoids. There's glucocorticoids. So, and there's androgenic ones. Those are ones that, like testosterone makes us more manly, right? More masculine. So there's a proper place for delivery of everything. And there's proper timing, proper dosing. It's not just giving somebody something. How much, when do you stop it? How do you stop it?
So it's not the same steroids like we think about when we're talking about performance enhancers or ones that have deflammatory components when someone has an autoimmune.
They're different compounds, but they're in the steroid family. So you might be my brother, but we're not the same people. You have a bit of genetic difference.
And so you said steroids is something that we produce inside of us. Mm-hmm. So where do we also create it in the lab now?
Well, we can create it chemically and produce them, but there's a little organ that sits on top of your kidneys called the adrenals, or the adrenal, and that's where adrenocorticosteroids come from that you produce yourself. And every hormone in the body is in a very fine balance, and a lot of them follow what we call a negative feedback loop. So when the level is high enough, the body shuts itself off. Too low, it signals to produce more.
Practicing as a physician, what do you see now? It's Easter 2024. Happy Easter.
Thank you so much.
what do you see as the, the new maybe threat out there, or the most common threat out there from the regular person coming into you, with all these advancements that are coming, and we can touch on them as well, because you mentioned not only steroids, there's many exciting things that have been developed, that are being developed, that are being implemented. But what is something out there that's, a bit scary to you, that you maybe less positive about?
As far as therapeutic interventions?
Yes, as far as what maybe, people are suffering from nowadays that we don't necessarily have a solution for now, or something maybe people are suffering from as a result maybe of different types of interventions that have led us to where we are now.
Well, that's a great question. Anxiety and mental health problems, as you know, are on the rise. And I think everybody can appreciate that. Mental health is really getting a little bit out of control, and there's problems with that. So anxiety is a big thing that almost all young people have, where older generations, and you would think it maybe is because they're stoic or some other reason. No, it's because of what's going on in the world actually at this time. So we're in an information revolution. We're part of this by doing this podcast. Mm-hmm. This wasn't possible 30 years ago. So the information itself and consuming information can add to worry about the future. And really, when we think about anxiety is worry. It's worry about the future, what's going to happen. It could be biochemical in some aspects, but usually this is really focused on what might be. People have symptoms like that. I'm sweating, I can't sleep, my heart is beating out of my chest, I feel like I'm going to die. Those are symptoms of anxiety. I'm terribly concerned and worried about the world and what's going to happen to it, and all the things that I'm reading on the internet, which we didn't have until the internet in the 80s. So this poses a problem for not only mental health in general, but it poses a problem for everybody on the planet. So using information in an appropriate way and consuming it appropriately and switching our minds to taking in some of the natural things. There's ways to combat anxiety, right? So if you want, I can go through a few of them. Is that something you want me to talk about? Maybe.
Yeah, please. Okay. From your perspective,
okay,
please.
So from my perspective, the best things are, one, reconnecting with nature, unplugging. Number one. Number two.
So let's expand on that for a second. So I just want to expand on it, because I think someone even hearing this might think, oh yeah, of course, I know that. But why? Why is the unplugging, you think, important? So because unplugging can be just, they say, going for a hike.
Right.
Or turning your phone off.
Yes.
So why? What's the benefit of us? Is it because we're detaching ourselves from information? I'm just saying that because, okay, so I also focus on unplugging, maybe less connected to nature, but unplugging. And when I unplug, there is an anxiety-related reaction to it, because now you're unplugging. You're not going to... Even if I do unplug,
that's a withdrawal.
It's a withdrawal, but it's yes, I see it. But also it's a okay. So let's say you're which is not me, but a NFL fantasy person, and you need to unplug because your wife convinced you to unplug for a few days because it'll be better for your mental health. You might be there thinking like, all right, I can unplug for a week with my wife, but how am I going to make up all of this work in NFL fantasy? Or I'm going to unplug, and usually when I don't unplug, I'm making all these calculations in my brain. Now that I've unplugged, I'm just adding, stacking up work for myself when I replug into our world.
Right. So I love the title of your show because it has the word secret. So I'm going to give you a secret.
Gold.
If you are focused on the now, the future and anxiety don't have a place. We only live in the now. I don't live in the future. As a matter of fact, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes, and nobody does. So therefore, if we focus our energy on what we're doing right now and try to live our lives to the fullest, engage with each other, actively listen, actively communicate with each other, this is like a return to our mental status that we've had for tens of thousands of years. So when we don't do that, we have small addictions, yes. we start thinking about, oh, am I missing out on something?
Yeah.
I think there's an acronym for that.
FOMO.
Yeah, FOMO, right? They use that a lot now.
Yeah, they do.
So fear of missing out, FOMO. If you are really active in the now and you're doing something now and you're focused on it and you have intention to do it, there's no FOMO. You're doing what you're doing because you've chose to do that. And you have to learn how to train your brain to focus once again, because we have more ADD than ever. And the reason we have more attention deficit disorder is because we are consuming information in a fragmented, fractured way. So of course our mind is going to become fragmented and fractured. And we've done this to a generation of kids and gave them an iPad and said, here, go, this is your babysitter. So we have to unplug and we have to less screen time. Exercise is another one. It's an easy intervention. If you're exercising, you will have less stress. And there's lots of studies to back this up.
Yeah.
It releases peptides that actually make you less depressed. So exercise is the key. Increases blood flow, helps you with your life in general because you can perform things to a higher level. So all these things point to the same kind of thing. We just need to change our thought process a little bit because that's where it starts. If you can change your thoughts, you can change your health.
So for a, and let's say, I gave the NFL example for a guy. Let's go for a girl. So a girl, she's in college. All of her friends are going out. She knows that the right thing for her to do is not go out tonight because she has a lot of work to do or a lot of unplugging to do or speak to her parents to catch up. But she's not going out tonight. But all of her girlfriends are going out and they're having the best time ever. She's sitting there, not in her now. She's sitting with them. She's thinking about the FOMO. Like, crap, I can't believe I'm not there. So for that girl, is it important for her to recognize that she is experiencing FOMO?
So I have a question for you. Why didn't she go out with her friends? That's communication and saliva. Communication between human beings also decreases anxiety. Going out with your friends will help it. I'm not telling you to go out and do things that, would harm you, but going out and having communication with other human beings, this is a problem about, again, being plugged in, is that we don't talk to each other. We don't in person. I can FaceTime you. Hey, I'll text you. It's not real communication. It's fragmented communication. So when we go out somewhere with other people, that helps our mental health.
But
so why didn't she go out?
So let's so hypothetically, she didn't go out for a good reason because there are better things all around for her to do, not going out. But the fact that she's experiencing the FOMO, because she might not go out so that she can, I don't know, attend her, a Zoom, an anniversary, a wedding Zoom, because we're during COVID. So she has to be plugged into a Zoom with her family. Meanwhile, she's missing out on an amazing night out with her girlfriends in college, and she's experiencing FOMO. She is, in her now, is on the Zoom with her family, but her FOMO, in her mind, the anxiety is, shit, I really want to be there with my friends. So you're kind of caught. You're being pulled in two directions.
So if they say, well, what should I do? Because I'm kind of torn, is what you're saying.
Yes.
When we make decisions on what we're going to do with our time, that has value to it because all we really have is time. And that's kind of something, when we spend time together doing something now, I'm cutting off the possibility if somebody said, hey, you want to go out for a boat trip instead of doing this? No, I have something else. If I didn't want to do this, I should say, hey, thank you very much, but I'm going to decline. So once we make a decision, you have to follow it through. That's part of integrity and communication with other people because they're depending on you. So we have to deal with that. We have to say, it's okay, I'm going to do this now. And then we could say, later, you could split things. Hey, I'm going to devote so much time to family time today. And then I do want to go out with my friends tonight and let the people know in your inner circle and say, this is something I really want to do. If it's, her parents she's speaking to, it's important to connect with your family. So you have to try to find something to alleviate the conflict that you have. And then you have to make a decision and a plan about it. So once you make a plan, you execute your plan. And sometimes plans don't go exactly how we expect. So the next thing you'll need is resilience. You'll have to adapt and overcome whatever happens. That's the difficult part. How do I adapt and overcome to get to, complete whatever task I need to do? And how am I going to do that? I notice that, some people have a hard time with organizing their thoughts with that. And write it down. Ask for help. Communicate with somebody else. Those will be all helpful things. Other people's opinions about us, external opinions, really don't matter. You know what matters? What you think of you. That's what matters. So whatever your core values are, you have to get those first and know who you are. And then if somebody has an opinion, they didn't like something you did, of course you want to be empathetic and understand how you're making them feel. Although, don't do that at your own expense. Don't lose yourself, because not everyone will understand where you're trying to go in life and what you're trying to do. And this is a crux of being the best you can be, something I like to call self-actualization.
Yeah.
Incremental, small improvements daily, and over a year, if we made a 1% improvement every day, we're at 365% at the end of the year better. That's a big improvement. We just have to stick to our plan and who we are.
Which can be a cause of, and I'm not saying this in the negative sense of the world, but a lot of anxiety. Because if you're planning a 1% increase every day for the next 365 days, I can see that as being also like, crap, it's going to be an uphill battle this year.
1%, how much time do you have to spend a day on you to fix you then? What do you think that would be?
To increase 1%?
Yeah, just get 1% better. Small change. How much time do you have to spend on you a day to do that?
Probably 5 minutes.
Probably 18 minutes, but that's okay.
Why 18?
Because they say that if you spend 18 minutes on a new skill every day, that skill, and in a year, that skill will be developed better than 99% of the people that are not doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it is definitely true. It's the slow, steady progress that nobody wants to put in the 18 minutes, or they'll make an excuse.
So why? Why are we like that? Why do we shun away from the 18 minutes? Because we are.
Because I think it's
because even like extra disciplined people that I know who can put in the 18 minutes whenever they choose every single day, they still are aware of the force pulling them not to do that 18 minutes every day.
Right. There's a great explanation of this. The human brain is designed to go towards pleasure and not pain. And let's face it, if you're going to the gym, your 18 minutes is, I'm going to study, or I'm going to run, or whatever your discipline that you want to do for your self-improvement, it's a little painful. And it's not natural to go towards pain. So you have to endure a little bit of an uphill battle, and you have to say to yourself, I'm just going to do this, and this is who I am. And you make it part of your core of who you are, rather than, well, I'm saying I'm doing this. Saying you're doing it is good. That's a start. But actually following through, how do we connect those two things together? You become that person already. So if you say, I'm the person that trains every 18, it's going to do 18 minutes a day. I'm going to do it every day, or I'm going to do it 5 days a week, or whatever you pick. Or I'm going to do a half hour, whatever your interval is that you're going to do.
Yeah.
And you don't follow through it. Who are you telling a story to then?
Yeah.
It's yourself. So you have the CPU, you have the master computer. It tells your body what to do. It's not random. It's not extraneous if you focus your brain. If you don't focus and you don't have good intent, yes, then when I mean intent, I mean like your intention has to be every day, I'm going to do this. You wake up, you go, okay, I'm looking forward to my training session. I'm looking forward to my study session. And and it becomes part of you. And that's how you do, become incrementally better each day.
For people that experience like levels of anxiety that are debilitating in a way, because I've seen people who claim at least to experience levels of anxiety that even if they decided to do something, or even if it was part of them, they just at this moment they are incapable of facing whatever that is. For those people, and I wanted to take this into a do those people experience different types of body pathologies, like symptoms that come out physically when you kind of debilitate yourself mentally into not doing the things you kind of really did want to do or should be doing?
Absolutely. Because what happens is your brain, again, it's going to tell your body what to do. You might have accelerated heart rate. You might start sweating. You might feel very nervous and shaky, all those things. I mean, as long as it's not from a medical reason. Some people have different levels of anxiety. There's mild, which everyone almost has some degree of mild anxiety. There's moderate, where I really don't feel comfortable level. And we have scales and things we do, like the GAD-7.
But like the moderate levels is, and
Yeah.
that's what is that the homeostasis what we want? Is that what we want to be? The equilibrium of moderate anxiety all the time?
We want the least anxiety we can possibly have, because it doesn't serve us in any way. It doesn't help us. We're worrying about something that doesn't exist. It's a worry about the future. It doesn't exist yet. And if you're worried about the past, that doesn't exist either. It's already gone. It's just a memory.
Yeah.
So you're worried about a memory, or you're worried about something that may occur which doesn't exist. So you're literally worrying about nothing. But what if is the thing.
Yeah.
But what if there is no what if? It's what is now is happening. Everything else is uncertain. And you have to come to grips with that. If you have severe depression, you need mental health, and you might need medication, because it's hard to, sometimes people have imbalances in their levels of serotonin. There's other things. They have maybe too much norepinephrine. So we have medications for that to help them. There's a myriad of, from everything from your basic, anti-anxiolytic medications to the top of the line there would be benzodiazepine. So we have medications, we have counseling. So this really, the things I'm talking about will help people that have mild to low moderate anxiety.
Does like engaging, in conversation, in sharing, like in therapy, and having a counselor, that type of thing, do those processes, can they change the like the mental composition, the balances of these different chemicals in your brain? If you do connect more to nature, if you do work out, for the people that do have that imbalance, can it repair that?
So it's always the first line of therapy. So yes, it can help it. You might still need medicine.
Yeah.
You may not. So that, takes work.
But it's not a must. Like if you do have some imbalance, it doesn't mean that you have to take medication, because there are ways to maybe even it out a little bit.
Again, it depends on the degree.
Yeah.
So if you say, I can't leave my house, I'm so anxious, and I'm afraid what's going to happen, and my blood pressure is sky high because I'm worried about everything, you're probably going to need some medicine, okay? Yeah. And we do have screening tools that we use. One is called the General Anxiety Disorder Screening. 7 questions, and we grade it. And it gives me an idea, because it's self-reported. It gives me an idea where you're at on that. Yeah. But if you have symptoms where I can't leave the house, or I am so nervous I can't even talk to anybody, I've isolated myself at that point, something's got to be done, because that in itself can perpetuate more anxiety, and it can cause more problems where you slip further and further down.
1% every day.
1% improvement. So when we talk about these interventions, as far as the non-pharmacological interventions, these are always first line. And the problem I see in medicine a little bit is sometimes we just skip the first line. It takes work. I have to work with people with relaxation training. I have to work with them with breathing, mind-body connection. It takes time. And you have to sit with the patient a few minutes. And insight into your own problems, that could take a long time sometimes. Well, this is why I feel like this. And getting the insight and being able to incorporate these things and change the way you think, so you think in a more healthy way for yourself, it's not easy, but it's not impossible. It's something, again, we're back to the 1%. How much can I improve this year?
If someone is on medications for those reasons that you mentioned, because it was debilitating and they need it, is that also is it something for life, or is it something that, like antibiotics, where you take it for a certain amount of time and then move on and you're back to your normal state?
So it's individually dependent. I can tell you in my experience what happens when we start these medications. Usually people do better and they're able to function. They're not perfect. So don't expect perfection. You're never going to get it. And since it is Easter Sunday, supposedly the last perfect person they crucified. So maybe you don't want to be perfect.
Amen.
Okay. So the bottom line here is it's not a one size fits all. I have patients that say, hey, I'm feeling really good now. I want to try to titrate or get off the medicine. And we do that with them. And then what they'll do is sometimes come back in a month or two and say, you know what? I really need the medicine. That was working for me. And I made a mistake in getting off. But you try. And I've had other people that discontinued and they didn't need it. So it's really an individual thing. And where are you at now? What's your coping mechanisms? What skills have you learned? What are you doing now? Have you reconnected to nature a little bit? Have you started exercising? Have you done some self-actualization or self-improvement? Have you really found the insight that you need in order to cope with this? Are you doing the breathing exercises? Are you doing your mind-body connection?
Are people confused when they come to like a medical doctor with a problem and you're talking to them about breathing exercises and mind-body connection?
I don't know that they're confused. I think that they're apprehensive a little bit because some of these things, have been stigmatized a little bit. Like we used to say, years ago, it's hippie-esque or whatever. Yeah. And look, I'm pretty conservative in my thought process, and I'm pretty stoic in my thought process. Although, I will tell you this, when something has good evidence base and it works, I'm going to absorb it because it works. And that's the outcome I want. I want interventions that work. So I think that's part of the problem. I think part of the problem is on the part of training of physicians that they don't have a lot of experience with this. And I was lucky I was exposed to it during my residency. And that's how I went in. I went in like being very skeptical. So
how come you were exposed to it?
Oh, previously in my medical
in
career,
your residency. Yeah.
I was exposed to it.
Yeah, but how?
Yes. We had a good psychological team. So we had clinical psychologists that we worked with because I was in a residency that was unopposed. So we got a lot of exposure to mental health. We got a lot of exposure to surgery. We got a lot of exposure to things you don't usually do in residency for family medicine at a high level. So I got really good high level training. So I'm thankful to my mentors for that.
So just by coincidence where you ended up for your residency.
Right. Yeah. I'm hoping, I don't know all the programs and their idiosyncratic ways that they teach students, but since in family medicine, 30% of our practice is we're de facto psychiatrists or we're dealing with mental health. And, I think it behooves us to get good at it and at least be able to, if we can't treat it or not good at it, at least use the resources we have in the community to refer these patients. The problem is the resources are overwhelmed.
Yeah, which takes us back to the first point of the conversation. So when you see people, you mentioned mental health being maybe the biggest new concern, modern concern from what you see. Is it generally speaking, do you find that people are coming to you to combat this and win this, challenge that they are facing in life? Or is it something that people are accepting? They're showing up to the doctor, but they're accepting defeat.
So there is sometimes loss, but defeat means you've given up all hope. That basically defeat is, I'm not going to do anything further. Just, I'm done. We have losses, and the only way that we learn anything is through loss. You don't learn much when you win, but you do learn what you need to work on when you lose things. So if they can accept the fact that none of us are perfect, and we all have times where we fail, and failure is okay. I learned this from one of my veteran brothers, and whenever somebody fails at something, he just says, good. I said, good. Yeah, good. You get an opportunity.
I think I know who you're talking about.
You're talking about Jocko. Yeah. So he always says good. And I'm like, okay, I could buy into that. I understand where he's coming from because he gives us an opportunity. And I never said it in quite that way, but I always knew that each time you do something and you fail, you're closer to actually performing whatever it may be, whatever tasking it might be correctly, but you have to go through this process. And the process is, again, it's not comfortable. It's painful. So it's the same thing with mental health. It's a process, and you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, but you have to go through the process. And if you're okay with picking yourself up off the floor then you're going to be okay. Each fall means you get an opportunity to get back up and do it differently. But if you want to stay on the floor and be defeated, that's your personal thing. That's something that you've decided at that point. I'm defeated. I can't do it anymore. Okay, I understand. And then what am I going to do for you at that point? If you think you're defeated, I'm going to say you're not. I'm going to try to convince you you're not defeated. You just had sometimes we have a bad day. A funny story about it. I've had a bad day.
Yeah.
It's a mental health story. I was just thinking about it.
So can you tell?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me. So I used to work in the ER, and I had a gentleman come in, and he had some cognitive problems, but he swallowed a battery. So we saw the battery on the x-ray, and you don't see that every day, a battery in the intestine. And it was a regular like AAA battery. So I asked him, I said to him, and I can't say his name, but I said to him, what was going on? What was going through your mind? Why did you swallow that battery? And he said to me, I was having a bad day. And I really couldn't connect how having a bad day and swallowing a battery got in the same, thought process, but that wasn't really for me to decide at the time. And in the ER, it's a little bit different. It's like, do we need to retrieve the battery? Is it going to burn a hole through his intestine? And usually, like AAA batteries will pass. We watch them. It's the batteries, those disc batteries, like that you find in watches and things. Oh, that'll burn a hole right through your intestine. Ooh. So you got to be careful with kids swallowing those. So, little public health safety message here too.
Yeah. So if you swallow something, like I swallowed a coin once when I was very young, it just goes through.
It just
goes poop
through.
It out.
Just poop it out. Yeah.
But does the body examine the object and try and suck out any components that would be nutritious or of value? Does it?
So I would say that your digestive enzymes and everything's going to act on it, and it's probably not going to get a whole bunch of nutrient or trace minerals out of that quarter, and it's probably going to look like a quarter when it comes out. Yeah, which is so it's probably not going to make much of a difference. Depends if it was an old silver quarter, probably, or the alloy clad quarters that we have now, also,
which are all disgusting and brown anyway.
Yeah. Don't eat quarters.
Yes. So you mentioned mental health. We spoke about that. Number 2, which I want to throw at you, so I don't know if it will be number 2 on your list or not, is diabetes. Mm-hmm. Only because because of this revolution of a drug, Ozempic, that is spoken about in non-medical contexts, is spoken about in so many areas, from boys' dinner table conversations to girls getting ready for a wedding to people that have been administered it because they need to lose weight immediately, and people that are suffering from diabetes, and also in the business world, because it's like the biggest money maker ever.
This is a great question. So thanks for asking this question. So, Mike, what would you like me to address on that?
So first with diabetes, how are we looking? Because they've been telling us for a couple of decades now that the numbers have been increasing all the time, and people are getting more obese and more affected by diabetes.
Absolutely. So again, we're in a culture and an information revolution and a technological revolution that doesn't produce as much exercise. We also have programming. When I say programming, I mean media, advertisement, that tells us to eat 5 meals a day, 4 meals a day, keep eating, because this is, of course, marketing for their company, for their bottom line. So the combination of the two things have caused a tsunami of diabetes and obesity in the country. So it is a huge problem. It's a huge expense, and that's why the likes of these GLP-1s that you're referring to are doing so well, and they are miraculous medications. They're very good. So we look at, from a physician's standpoint, I'm looking at the hemoglobin A1C, and for a diabetic, we want that less than 7 is our goal. And, we have a diabetic, let's say they come in at 9. Well, at 10 or 11, I'm thinking about giving them insulin, but that's because that's really bad. But now you can have, the Ozempic, which is an injectable, or some glutide, which is the only oral GLP-1. And there's other brands, and so I'll just leave it.
Is this like is the Ozempic completely different than what we've been used to seeing, the insulin injections?
Yes, it's a totally different class of medication. Works different. Insulin. That's what you're producing from your pancreas, right? This is a GLP-1 agonist antagonist, which basically makes you feel like you've already eaten. So it decreases your appetite and it lowers your blood sugar in that mechanism. So it will lower a person's hemoglobin A1C, which is their glycosylated hemoglobin. I'll go into what that is in a second, just to make it simple. About 2 points, which can take you from really looking bad on paper to really looking good on paper. So glycosylated hemoglobin is the amount of exposure of sugar to the hemoglobin, and it binds to it. So when you bind it to it, there's a value. And why do we want to use that? Because red blood cells, where the hemoglobin is in, stays around for about 120 days. So instead of just getting a random, blood sugar, and it's just whatever you ate that day or that 5 minutes ago, I can look into your blood sugar and find out, hey, how's this guy been doing for the last 90 to 120 days? So it's very valuable.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's definitely a very effective drug for diabetes. Now, people are using it a lot for weight loss, is what you've talked about, and it's clamored after. And, the expense of producing, I just read an article, is about $5 or less to produce it. And it's selling sometimes for $1,000.
Yeah.
So there's a disconnect there in people being able to get it, especially my diabetics. And then insurance companies don't want to cover it at all because it's expensive. And they're, that's a whole nother story, and it could be a whole different podcast, but that's a problem. Of course, if you can't afford the drug, you can't use the drug. But what is it doing for the obese patient? Yes, it's kickstarting them and basically getting them to lose some weight so they feel more comfortable. But when you stop the medication, what do you think is going to happen to them? If they don't change who they are from their brain perspective,
they'll go back to the same.
Exactly. It might be worse. And then they'll go, well, if I get fat again,
so you
I'll
literally,
just take the drug.
I haven't tried it myself, but I take Ozempic, and then if I'm, whatever the levels are my body is used to consuming and eating, I just won't desire that anymore and won't be able to.
It'll make you feel like you're full.
And I won't be able to, because are you a Kevin James fan? King of Queens.
Yeah, I know Kevin James.
I listened to him on a podcast recently. It really
funny.
Opening up about his eating disorders, and he's doing this documentary. Who is saying that the documentary is there to prove that he could do everything right. He has a personal nutritionist and a trainer and all these different things, everything right for 6 days a week. But on that 7th day, he is able to, cause his body that much harm that will erase the previous 6 days. So he's spending, I don't know how many weeks it was, but a few weeks of perfect 6 days. On the 7th day, eat whatever you want. So when someone says to me that I won't feel hungry with Ozempic, I can still imagine myself eating a lot on Ozempic, because I know how I feel without Ozempic, how I feel full. And when I'm full, I can still, if you put a pizza in front of me, I can still force myself to eat it, because I know, even if because I'm not eating it because I'm hungry, I'm eating it for the pleasure of the beautiful cheese.
You've hit the nail on the head. So these type of things, especially carbohydrates, we don't eat them for nutrition. We eat them for pleasure. And that brings us back to what I said. We like to go to pleasure, and we want to stay away from pain. That's our human nature. So you have to make yourself a little uncomfortable. So what I will tell you is this. If you want to be successful, in order to make yourself comfortable, you must first make yourself uncomfortable. So that's really an important thought. In order to make yourself comfortable, you want to be fit. You want whatever outcome you may want. You have to make yourself uncomfortable. And it's got to be consistent. And you have to do that. And you have to be okay with that. And then your mindset is correct. If you don't have a good mindset, you're not going to be, the outcome you want, I'm not going to say it's not going to be achievable, but it's going to be difficult, because what did he do? 6 days a week, he was on the game. And then the 7th day, what did he do? He undermined his success by getting out of the game. And I'm not saying you couldn't, have what we call a little bit of a cheat day, but you can't go hog wild. I mean, there's extremes to everything. I ate 6 pizzas and I had 16 bottles of Coke. You just gave yourself like, a caloric intake that's going to take you a month to deal with. So the bottom line is this. First thing is your brain. Get the CPU to do what you program your brain. If I program you, brainwashing. You program you, you get what you want. And I do that in almost everything in my life. So there's a lot of different, things that we use social media. But usually people don't control their social media in a way that is going to work for them. If you go to my feed on Instagram, what I'd like to look at, okay, that feed only has things that I'm interested in. Everything else is inappropriate or I don't like it, I don't want to see it. And I have to do that. It's an active thing to get the algorithm to produce what I want. And it still produces things I don't want to see. I don't really like political content, so don't want it. Press a button and it's supposed to go away, but it sneaks back in sometimes. So you got to keep forming your algorithm and then do the same thing with your brain.
Yeah, because things will sneak in every day.
Exactly.
Every day.
And you have to keep doing what? Pushing them out. You press the delete button, you block it, you do whatever you have to do in order to get what you want as the outcome, not what other people decide you want.
Yeah. Diabetes, is it usually the case does it stem from being overweight?
It's two components to diabetes. There's a genetic component, which gives you risk and predisposition to it for type 2. There's a genetic component, type 1, that is purely genetic. You'll get diabetes at a young age. My wife is a diabetic. She is not overweight. She's rather thin. But her is from a genetic cause of family, diabetic, right? Her mom had diabetes, so she has some genes that, are just not expressing correctly. And my hope for the future is this, that we'll be able to do some gene editing to fix diabetes once and for all. That's going to come with some resistance. Why? There's a lot of money in treating it, as we just said. So the bottom line is to fix it and correct the underlying genetic error. Once you fix it, it's fixed, right? And then no more medicine.
Yeah. So do we know roughly what the percentages of people that, like your wife, that suffer from diabetes, who that stems from a genetic?
Well, it can also be, don't forget, there's, especially if it's adult onset diabetes, there is expression of genes and there's also putting pressure on genes not to express. And that has to do with diet and exercise. So it's not just one thing. I know most human beings would like to think, oh, this is the cause. It's multifactorial. So I don't think that we can ever say, well, this percentage exactly is caused to genetics. I don't want to say never, but we should be able to, and probably in the future, figure out those risk factors, put in the risk factors and stratify the risk to see what percentage chance you'll have of developing diabetes if you have a certain genome and what you can do to slow that down or how we can fix it. I think that's some futurism there.
And being medicated on, drugs for diabetes and dealing with it, can one continue living their lives like, in a normal way, eating normal amounts like regular people, or do they need to make strict adjustments and stick to them to maintain their health? So
inherently with diabetes, we have an error in carbohydrate metabolism. So you do have to eat a low carbohydrate diet. Now, something great about the information age. If you go to diabetes.org, which is a free website, it'll give you everything that you need to know and more about, and it's a free website, about diabetes. It has everything from diet plans to the food hub, to the latest research, to all the medications, to a community of other diabetics you can talk to. So there's great resource, but you got to use them. And, when I have a diabetic come in, that's the first starting point. I go, well, we got to get your diet right. There's 3 things that will affect the outcome of your diabetes and whether you live a normal life. And there's only these 3 things. Number 1 is diet. Number 2 is exercise because it decreases your blood sugar. Number 3 is take the medicines appropriately and how they're given to you. Those 3 things will produce an outcome of a normal life expectancy for you.
So the third one, taking the appropriate medications and the appropriate levels, that's where the patient-doctor trust and relationship comes into play. But generally speaking, is it a problem of people not adhering to prescribed medication, taking too much or too little of them, even when it comes to things, like diabetes medications?
Well, I think it's human nature to kind of do our own thing sometimes. And what I find is some people will adjust things properly, and I'll agree with it. And some people, they just don't like taking medicine. And that is a thing. And it's convincing them that they need to because of the possible sequelae that can occur from not having a controlled A1C and not controlling their blood sugar, which they are not good things. Retinopathy that leads to blindness, renal disease or kidney disease that leads to dialysis, infections that lead to loss of limb, and cardiovascular disease would be the big one, right? You get a heart attack. So all these things, your risk is increased, and if we can get you to a normal level, you'll live longer, and you will have all your legs, hopefully, and you'll be able to see, and you won't be on dialysis. So that's a decision that we make. Do I want to follow these steps? Do I want to treat myself the best way? Do I want to trust my physician to make sure that they're doing the best for me? But we have a scorecard. It's simple. I run the hemoglobin A1C every 95 days or so, or every 3 to 4 months, and that's where you're at. There's not really arguing with the lab test or me. I'm like, either you're doing it or you're not doing it. And then I titrate the medication depending on what I have. Can you do things to help you? Yeah, eat a better diet and exercise. Those are for you. Maybe you'll need less medicine then, and that would be good. Less dosing or less different agents. We've got 10 agents for treating diabetes now.
Would you have picked diabetes after mental health?
I think so. Let's go back a step. Obesity. You talked about obesity, yeah. And childhood obesity. These are big problems. So, taking out the genetic component, that's always going to be there. But what about the diabetics that it's purely because they have insulin resistance secondary to, huge adipose tissue? That's just saying they're fat in a nice way and kind of making it bad.
Yeah. Because it just breaks my heart when you see a 7-year-old obese kid.
I got a little story about that. That's funny that you say that.
Please.
I had a 7-year-old kid when I was a resident, and I think I want to say he was like 100 pounds or close to it. Okay, he was big. I mean, but he wasn't very tall.
Yeah.
And obviously, you look at the kid and you go, this kid, he's obese, right? And I asked the parents, who were normal weight parents, I said to him, what do you think about Junior's weight? They go, he looks okay. He could use a couple more pounds. So perception, we used to say a fat, chubby kid was cute. And, I'm like, no. I'm like, he's morbidly obese for his age. And he way up, in the wrong percentile way above the norm for his age.
Yeah.
And that could produce a lot of problems for him as a child and also as an adult. I mean, musculoskeletal problems, not mention diabetes, not to mention all the other things that, the other kids are cruel to each other. They're going to tease them. And those other issues. And then you have problems mentally because all the kids abused you your whole time because you were big or whatever, which, that's a whole nother issue. We have anti-bullying and all that stuff going on, but kids are kids. You're not going to stop that 100%. Yeah. So there's a social aspect to it. There is, a physiological aspect. There is a direct problem with just in general with people's health. And their perception was not in tune with reality, right?
Yeah.
So kind of a weird thing.
Yeah. Or maybe not, because you were saying how for them to be in tune with reality is probably swimming towards pain for them. If you want to admit to yourself that your 7-year-old kid has a problem.
Right. It's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. So if we took a step back to obesity, if we take a step forward to a third, is there another thing that's a top concern now for you when just generally seeing people? You're like,
well, it's the big one that's always been there in America, which is heart disease. I mean, it's the number one killer. heart disease, coronary heart disease. So again, these are things that are dietary, exercise, and genetics. You know, your dad died of before he was 60 in his 50s or 40s from heart disease. Maybe you got some bad genetics that is not able to utilize, you know, the lipoprotein group efficiently, and maybe you have a problem where your blood vessels are going to get clogged up early. So that we can screen really easy. We just do lipid profiles, so pretty easy. So that's a big one. And lack of exercise, the things we're doing, sitting too long.
Yeah.
Not going out, not being in nature, not, you know, taking a walk, not communicating with each other in person, shaking somebody's hand, making a connection, making a bond. These are all little things. The genetics is a big thing. If that's the showstopper for you, the heart's an important thing. You know, the cardiologists, they don't care about anything but the heart, because if your heart stops, it's a showstopper. Your brain don't work, it's a showstopper. So these are things that we have to be concerned about. Hypertension would go in there. So hypertension plays into all these other things. I got anxiety. Oh, my blood pressure is going to go up, right? So all these things come together. Bad diet, blood pressure goes up. Lack of exercise, blood pressure goes up. All things that will make coronary heart disease more risky. And that's, we stratify the risk in that, and we try to give people medications to lower the risk. Does it lower it to zero? It's not even near zero. It's still, there's risk. And what's tolerable risk and what's not. Well, if you get the disease, it's 100% that you got it.
Yeah.
So we're hoping you don't get it, and we're trying to stop something from happening, which is difficult sometimes for people to, well, I'll do something else. I'm like, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to do these supplements and magic, whatever it may be. Okay, let's do it. Take the blood test again, and we'll do another lipid profile. I'm going to exercise, eat right, doc, and I'm going to take these magic beans, or I'm going to take some omegas and some coenzyme Q10, and I'm going to take some reduced rice. Great, let's try that. I'm going to eat more cold water fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, cod, trout. I'm like, okay. 4 months later, they come back, the level's higher. So I wish it worked, but it didn't work. So now what's the only thing we could do? Medication. Because they have some cellular level dysfunction that they're not processing their fat correctly.
Yeah.
Or I should say the lipoproteins are not fat. So that's problematic.
Yeah, it is. And it's a scary one.
Right.
It sounds like, you know, also based on what we see when someone dies of a heart attack, you know, heart stopping, it's unpredictable. It seems like, because, you know, usually it catches someone when they're out jogging or at a wedding or something. You know, it's always in the movies, at least. It's always very dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
The difficult thing, and also bringing us back to the beginning of the conversation on, you know, the age of information always pushed in our faces. So, like, you know, a lot of the things you're saying, we are coming back to, you know, regular exercise, connection to nature, you know, quote unquote, simple things. But exercise, you know, if we take exercise or diet, diet, exercise, let's take those two. Today, what they say about, you know, what a kid is, you know, is being programmed, their CPU is being programmed, right, by their teachers, by their parents, by their friends. What they're being programmed with in terms of exercise and diet is very different than what I got programmed on when I was growing up, and what you were programmed on when you were growing up. So it's like, these are the fundamental pillars of our health, but the interpretation of what those pillars, how do you act on those pillars, differs all the time. And even today, if we look at diet, we have so many, because of the age of information. It's not like this way or this way or this way, pick one. No, it's like, okay, there's a million different ways that you can do things or should be doing things, all these experts telling you, and everyone has the credentials and everyone has the experience and everyone has 1,000 people they've helped and changed their lives and they have it on video. It's messy.
It is messy. So you said something very profound. Keep it simple. We have to simplify it. So I'm going to simplify this to, I don't care how you get to this particular thing, and there's many paths that can lead to victory or success. You don't have to, it's not a straight path. And that's another thing we tell people, oh, it's a straight line. Some people got a head start and some people are just lucky. Sometimes the guy that starts last finishes first. It doesn't matter. What are you finishing for? What's the finish line? Death is the finish line. So don't race. Take path. Enjoy the journey is what I say. But if we want to make this really simple, it's very simple. It's the calories that you take in or consume minus the calories that are expended. And that formula will always be true. All these diets work with that in some aspect, whether you're doing intermittent fasting, whether you're doing Atkins, whether you're doing low carb, whatever it may be that you're doing, you're eating less calories at the end of the day, and that's what's producing your outcome. And that coupled with a small part of it is exercise. The exercise and the amount of exercise you do will, yes, you're burning calories, so you're going to get some burn. But if you think you're going to exercise your way to being thin without looking at your diet, that will never work because you'll eat your way right around your great exercise by taking too much calories in. But I deserve this, fill in the blank of your favorite food, because I worked out. You just did what, Kevin James did. He undermined your success by saying it's okay. And that,
now, even I told Bianca the other day that she wanted pizza, and I said, like, I ran today, so it's a good day to ask me if we should get pizza.
So does that mean you can never have pizza again? What if all you did, what if I told you this? Nutritionally speaking, it matters what you eat. And yes, you should have a high nutrition and low calorie diet. But for weight loss, we're just going to look at weight loss. I'm not telling anybody to do this, and don't do this, okay? But if I said, all you're going to do is eat pizza, it's the pizza, I'm going to call it the pizza diet, but you're only going to eat this much pizza, and I calculated the calories, and they were less than your basal metabolic rate, then you're going to lose weight. It doesn't matter that it was pizza. But that pizza has what? It's a high calorie, high salt diet right there. And it's calorific. So how much pizza did you eat? Did you eat one slice or did you eat a half a pie? I know somebody told me, I ate pizza, I ate 2 pizzas. I'm like, oh man, I don't know how you ate 2 pizzas. I couldn't eat 2 pizzas. So, but when you're younger, you could easily sit down and eat a half a pizza because you're hungry. You got a lot of hunger, right?
Yeah. Or a full pizza.
Yeah. Or a whole pizza. There you go. I was going there, but I think I ate 2 pizzas. And I'm like, what? And he's a big guy. He is. I'm like, 2 pizzas. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So we have to get back to who are we?
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
What outcome do you want? But one of the things I'd like to say is you don't get to complain if you're the source of the problem. Why are you complaining about yourself? Complain to someone that cares. That would be you. If you don't care about you, I, of course, as a physician, I empathize with you. I care about you. I want the best life for you. I want you to have a great outcome. It makes me, as a doctor, say that that's a successful communication with my patient. But it's up to you at the end of the day. I'm not going to say, hey, Dan, slap your hand, put that pizza down.
Yeah.
Hey, get outside. I'm not, I can't do that for you. You can do that for you. You are the controller of your own boat and your own destiny. You decide what you want to go and where you want to go with that.
Which is the scary part because everyone's like left to their own liberty to decide.
I think it's liberating, and you have free will and you have freedom to do what you want, and you could become what you want. Look, I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally, and if you couldn't tell by my accent, okay?
Yeah. I was hoping you weren't faking it.
We were, no. I wish I was. But, when growing up, I was so poor I couldn't pay attention. I had to, take loans for school, and it was not easy. It was painful. And I did some things that really took a lot of fortitude to do, and I'm glad that somehow I was blessed to have this, fortitude to be able to do it. But the bottom line here is I was going to decide that I'm going to be successful in what I'm doing, and I'm going to become a medical doctor. I was a chiropractor before I was a medical doctor for 18 years. So I didn't dabble, and I actually did that job. I was a pretty good chiropractor, and I decided one day, okay, I've done this long enough. I want to become a medical doctor. And
So
nobody did that for me. You have to decide what you want, and then you have to go after it and say, I'm going to have some times where I might fail, and I'm not going to let it defeat me. Getting back to that thought process.
But so was that your thing, was becoming a medical? Has it always been a thing? Like when you started on in your career as a chiropractor or as a kid in Brooklyn, did you always want to?
No. I wanted to, when I was a little kid, I was kind of more academic when I was really young, more academic. I was like a little professor, right? And I wanted to be a biochemist. And I decided that I don't want to like chemistry as much as I have to in order to do this. So it was a natural thing where I can still be involved in science, which I excelled in, some mathematics, which I was good in. And I said, okay, well, it found me, like I said, I'm a physician not because that's something that I consciously said at some point. Well, I always wanted to be a doctor. It chose me, and that's who I am now. It wasn't, it's something that I'm glad that I was blessed with, that I came to this and that it was a good fit for me, because you never know until you try something on how well you're going to like it, So that's kind of how that occurred.
So talk to me about your career as a chiropractor. 18 years, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Second time the number 18 appears on the podcast.
There you go.
Was it not too late to make the transition?
So that's always for you to decide what's too late. There's people that I know that did it later in life than me that were in one field and became a physician. So I have a friend of mine, I think he finished up, he was probably 58 or 59 when he finished it. So he started out later, he was a PA. So it was an easier transition for him than me. And he made that transition at that point in time. So as long as you're breathing, it's never too late. You have to decide, weigh up the pros and cons. Is it right for me at this point in my life? What's the financial expenditure? How much is this going to cost me and all that stuff? And I paid little attention to that because I said, you know what? The worst scenario is that not attempting. I compare it to getting up to play baseball, and you get up to bat, right? And you stand in the batter's box and the pitch is coming and you strike out looking. Life, you can never strike out looking. That means you didn't attempt to swing the bat. What if you swing and miss and strike out anyway? Hell of a cut. Maybe you'll make a connection next time. So that was a failure, but it was an attempt.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I live my life a little bit. That I'm gonna go down swinging if I don't hit the ball. But success is what you think it is. In baseball, if you hit the ball 3 times out of 10, that's a 300 batting average. You paid a lot of money in the big leagues for that. That's great success. So I think we have to rethink what is success. It's not winning every time. It's not hitting the ball every time. The success comes with how we fail, actually. Baseball kids, right? The little kids, I had this with my son. They get upset when they lose. They really do. The winning team's happy. The losing team's not so happy. Some of the kids are crying. But we don't explain to them well enough as parents, hey, this is where we have an opportunity. It's good that you lost. Why? You get to work on your game now as a team. You get to work on your fielding. You get to get better. You get to work on yourself and your team together and get better hitting, get better fielding. And if you don't do those things, then you can lose next week also. And if you don't like how that feels, good. You can feel what it feels like to lose. And then either it's not the losing, it's how you're going to come back. What are you going to do to correct it, and how are you going to overcome the failure?
Yeah. Looking at both your careers as a physician and as a chiropractor, what are some differences that you feel in terms of maybe ability to help people, or similarities?
Well, this was great. I mean, any way you really help people, you're helping them. So this is a good direction, and you're in a service industry to help them. So that's the focus. And if you're getting a good outcome, which means I feel better, I'm more functional, I can do things I want to do. It's funny because me and the producer were just talking about this, and what he said is that he's an acupuncturist, which is an awesome healing art also. But he said to me, you're fortunate because you have a broad scope and you can do a lot more things to help your patient. And that if I had to do it again, I probably would have went to become a DO or an MD because that would better help me serve patients. So I think that's the outcome is we can better serve patients in a more complete way and have more tools, have more interventions, more things I could do for them so they can benefit from a skill set that's a little bit more diverse.
So it gives you feel more tools to at least to approach any given situation, and also, I guess, more, maybe not always, but generally speaking, someone coming in for help when they're coming to you as a physician is maybe a bit different than the type of person coming to you on a daily basis as a chiropractor?
Oh, absolutely, because chiropractors are musculoskeletal specialists that treat primarily the spine. They do treat some extremities, so that's their area. But if you come in and let's say you have heart disease, they're not treating you. Let's say you have dysregulation of your blood sugar, you got diabetes or metabolic syndrome or what we call pre-diabetes. They can help you with diet. So the first steps they can help you with. But if you need medication, there's time for that. There's time for medication. And we have to be aware of this. When, and one of the things we need to do is try to work together for the patient good. But what happens is you get, serfdom. And serfdom's never good for the patient. And it alienates you from other types of healing arts. See what they have to offer, see what you can do. So it's made me a little bit more broad scope on being open-minded towards other things that may be helpful. Food medicine, Chinese, 5,000 years of food medicine. My wife's Chinese, I learn from her every day about something, and it's amazing, I never knew that. And we'll try this. Eat a little acid reflux, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's experienced a little agita or acid reflux. And she said to me, eat some celery. I said, celery? I tried yogurt, milk, the usual things. Celery, like instantaneous. I'm like, ooh, I never knew this is gold right here. Yeah, it's Chinese food medicine. I'm like, so you keep your mind open to other things. Don't boo-hoo them if you haven't tried it.
Yeah. So amazing, first of all. So your time as a chiropractor, why do we, I'll take responsibility. You think of chiropractic medicine, a lot of times we immediately go to backs cracking, necks cracking. And if you're as a former chiropractor, if you do go on your Instagram page, you might get fed sometimes from the algorithm some really nice neck cracks that get a lot of views and a lot of comments and a lot of shares and are very popular on social media. So can we explain chiropractic medicine and how it's a bit more than cracking joints? Because even I sarcastically proclaim myself to be a self chiropractor,
right?
Because every morning I get up and I crack very specific areas of my body, which makes me feel alive and ready to get 1% better.
So here's the thing: chiropractic. What the chiropractor is trying to do is mobilize areas where you have joint fixation. So those are areas that are immobile, and that's what you're doing for yourself. But we have to be a little bit careful when we're treating ourselves because we can sometimes take areas that have too much mobility in them, and it really takes somebody from the outside in, not the inside out, to figure out where are the areas that aren't moving properly, what's moving too much. We stabilize those with exercises, okay? And I'm no longer a licensed chiropractor in the state of Florida. I just actually, this year, this biennium, I just said, I don't really need the license anymore. So being that I'm just doing medicine, but this is from historical significance. So this is basically what the chiropractor is trying to do: induce motion where there is not or restriction. And there's lots of reasons why we get it. It might be inflammation. It might be that there's fibrotic tissue from injury. So those are some of the reasons. And they're focusing on the spine, but then the shoulder joint or all the axial skeleton and all the extremities can be all the joints can be manipulated. And the cracking is just this. It's really simple. You get a little kick out of this. It's like skeletal flatulence. Basically, you're cavitating the capsule that has synovial fluid in it, and you are changing that synovial fluid, which is a viscous liquid, to a small amount of gas. So if you try to crack it again, it won't. Why? Because the capsule then is not pressurized in the same way because it's been deformed with the manipulation. Now, in 20 minutes, you go back and you'll get that cracking noise or that popping again. So that's kind of the take on what they're doing. They're also supposed to be talking to you about hygiene. They can talk to you about diet. They can give you exercise and rehabilitative exercises. They could do physiotherapy modalities or physical type of therapies with you. And they work very nice with physical therapists. The physical therapists do manipulation. You're just they might call it something different. They might call it mobilization rather than manipulation because, of course, we have our turfdom, which separates us into groups. Yeah. And that's what human beings like to do.
So if it's, take a joint that's over time is becoming immobile and needs some assistance to induce some mobility in there, and so we want to manipulate that area. Is it temporary? Like so in 20 minutes we could do the crack again and get another sound. In those 20 minutes, did the manipulation reverse itself?
So now this is a neurological phenomena of the body trying to protect itself, especially if there's inflammation. So it might be locked down again, it may not. So you have to check the mobility of the segment. Just cracking it for the sake of causing the noise won't improve the function, because if the function's normal, can I make it more normal? And what we're doing with the manipulation is we're bringing the joint into what we call the paraphysiological range of motion. It's a little bit extended past the normal range of motion. That's what you're doing. And since it's limited, you're pushing it into actually the normal range of motion. So that's what's going on. You're just creating mobility.
Yeah.
Can I do this on my own somewhat? Yeah, it's called exercise. You're moving your joints. But manipulation is specifically where the joints are not moving properly and you're trying to move them and, man, my shoulder's tight. And you do a little manipulation, and the manipulation then breaks up some of the adhesive tissues, the fibrotic tissue that's kind of protected the joint from previous injury, and it might break that up a little bit. And then you need to keep it mobile. Otherwise, guess what? It's going to return. So that's kind of the crux, easy peasy lemon squeezy explanation of what the chiropractor is trying to do.
And joints, like maintaining joint health. Also, the older I get, only 30 years old, but the older I get and, introduce myself to more individuals in their 50s, 60s, 70s, I just hear and see more of hip replacements and knee replacements. And it looks scary and looks like something I definitely want to avoid. So how can I ensure joint health?
So what'll help joint health, and again, there are some genetic components.
Don't say diet and exercise.
Well, part of it's diet and exercise, but also staying away from injury. So injury will age your joints. Normal weight, I don't care how you get there, but normal weight. Hey, if you have a bridge and it's kind of breaking down a little bit, and do you drive like a tractor trailer that weighs a couple of tons over it, or do you want to drive a bicycle over it? It will fail structurally if you overload it. So if you've overloaded it with weight, you're going to have more of a problem. If you've injured it, like in other words, I somehow break down the components of it through accident, injury, fall, whatever, trauma. The other thing is inflammation. I'm eating the wrong things. And I hate to say diet and exercise, but it's the right answer on every test also. You see diet and exercise, pick diet and exercise. It's the correct answer. So why diet? Well, we have pro-inflammatory foods. We have anti-inflammatory foods. We have foods that we know aren't good for us and they're usually inflammatory, or stuff that just we eat and we go, oh, I felt terrible after that.
Yeah. But with the joints, also for me, maintaining joint health, I run, and I want to be running forever until the finish line. If you're looking at my knees and ankles, can they, if treated correctly, if avoiding any, crazy injuries, can they, in a way, maintain strength, get stronger over time? Like, what is it? Like, it's easy for me to imagine like a muscle, you know, growing in strength and getting stronger, getting bigger. How does the joint get more suitable, adaptable, stronger?
Right. So let's talk about that's a very good question. So there's basically a few things you can do. One we've already alluded to: maintain a proper weight. What surface are you running on? What kind of shoes do you have on? How far are you going? How long is your training? And you know, are you you're running with good biomechanics? You have a good gait and all that. If one of those things is off, it's like your alignment being out on your car, and you're going to wheel that tire is going to wear out a little bit quicker. Again, those are really important things to pay attention to if it's running, especially. Runners intrinsically want to run further and faster, and they want to run further and
Towards pain.
Yeah, towards pain, which is, you know, not a bad thing. But you have to tailor your activity and listen to your body. So incremental small changes in running, you're not going to go, hey, you know, I've been training 2 miles, and so I'm going to go out for a 10-mile run. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to be prepared to do that. Can you do it? You might be able to achieve it, especially at 30 years of age. Yeah, you probably could just do that. But the bottom line is you're going to pay a price. Staying away from injury is really important because post-traumatic arthritis is a thing. And then you have wear and tear arthritis. That's osteoarthritis. That's overuse. So there is a balance. And it's very difficult to find out what that balance is. And usually it's later in the game. And most people that complain about osteoarthritic pain, hip pain, back pain, they've had previous injury, previous car wrecks, you know, sports injuries, all those kind of things. And that accelerated the degenerative process. So stay away from injury hard. When you get an injury, proper rest. So proper rest is important for proper training. Rest interval is when we restore and repair. So if you're overtraining, you're going to cause problems. If you're undertraining, you're not going to get a great result. It's balance. So if you approach it like that, joint health. Well, how else can I help joint health? Make sure you eat good nutrition, right? The synovial fluid in there needs nutrients. And those are some things that you have to consider in your diet.
Is there a way to increase the synovial fluid?
So it's a cerebral mechanism, and basically with movement, you'll use the synovial fluid to lubricate the joint.
Synovial?
Yeah, synovial fluid. You'll use that synovial fluid, it lubricates the joints, and when you need more, your body produces more with movement. If you're in a cast, you're not moving your arm right, let's say. Yeah. It's really stiff when you take it out of the cast, and then you need some movement because the joint fluid, the joint oil, I'd like to call it, is not producing at the rate it could be.
And if there's a deficiency in the fluid, is that when we feel pain, like moving the joint?
That, and if you have inflammation in the joint, right? There was injury to it. Wear and tear on the joint where the articular cartilage is now destroyed for some reason or worn down, and the joint space henceforth is decreased. So you don't have enough space in the joint to adequately move the joint, or the joint surfaces are roughened and the articular cartilage at the end, that's that shiny stuff at the end of the bones, is worn away. Those will all cause increasing premature or with time osteoarthritic changes.
Besides steroids, what else is, and Ozempic, if you will, what else is something that we should be thankful for, excited for? Tell me if this is in the same category or not, maybe more in the discovery parts of it. Although the more I dig into it, I'm talking about stem cells. The more I dig into it, I'm actually realizing that, okay, like all the books that people recommend that I read are been published 20, 30 years ago. So it seems like it's not as new as the podcasts are talking about it.
Right. So, so stem cells every year, I usually train about 2 or 3, 4 medical students a year or nurse practitioners. And I was given the same assignment, which is let's look into stem cells and see where we're at. Is something that I want to offer because insurance doesn't cover it. It's very expensive. It's something I want to do in my practice or not. So it's come back with the same return each year. We don't have enough information to really decide that it's a good clinical outcome. Some people swear by it. And if you want to go by testimonial, that's okay for you. But for me as a physician, I have to go by evidence base and experience and all those things before I'll introduce something. You go, well, you'll be on a late adapter. That's better than an adapter and there's something that goes wrong and now I've caused some problems. So early adaptation in medicine for things, it's a painful process. We have to go slow and steady wins the race. We don't want to do harm. First, do no harm, right? That's what we say as physicians.
Yeah.
I believe in that. I really, so that's my take. Exciting, what I think is exciting is going to be gene editing is coming up with CRISPR technology and the technologies in epigenetics. So, and the computerization has enabled us to come in leaps and bounds, AI, and there's lots of systems out there now that this is the focus, is something I'm really hyper interested in and I'm just starting. So I feel like I'm a late adapter getting into this, but I'm not that late because there's some people that still like, they don't want any part of thinking about it even yet.
Yeah.
So I think it will compress time of discovery to a shorter time interval, and we'll be able to get a lot more data and information much quicker, especially as we go from machine learning to computer learning to super intelligent computers and the singularity approaches, or if that's even possible, who knows. But the bottom line here, the systems are still young. They're still new systems. You know, how long has ChatGPT been around? Since 2018, I think, is the year.
I think not even, yeah.
They're babies. So, and then, you know, I had a discussion with ChatGPT yesterday, and it, you know, I was asking it about its guardrails and basically how it answers questions, and it lied to me, and it then proceeded to apologize for lying to me, which I accepted its apology, but it's got its limitations, is what I found out. It's got a lot of limitations, and it doesn't do exactly what your input is. I know it's prompt generated, and it's from your prompts, and if you give it the right questions, the right stuff, it'll come close to what you want. Yeah. So we're at that crossroads, and take that now, extrapolate that to medicine and genetics and all the other things. I'm hoping, and I'm not in the field, so I don't know. I'm going to be going to a couple of seminars to learn a little bit about AI in medicine. I'm hoping that medicine actually got the good end of this stick, and they have a little bit more advanced AI, generative AI, that they're using now for their inquiries into these things.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
It's
really exciting, and must seem also crazy. If you think of yourself when you started this journey, even as a chiropractor, if you think that we'd end up with AI integrated machines to help with the epigenetics and eliminating diseases.
Well, that's one of the reasons I became a medical doctor, because
sci-fi.
There's limit there, right? And as a chiropractor, there's limit to sticking with musculoskeletal stuff, physical medicine. Now the genie's out of the bottle, right? So since the genie is out of the bottle, it could be a little problematic. What's the genie going to do? Hopefully it just grants me my wishes and doesn't decide that my wishes aren't worthy, and probably I'm not worthy. So we'll see what happens. It's really exciting. And yes, we have to think about, there's always good, bad, and evil that can occur from any intervention. So we have to be careful and go slowly. Don't just go because we can go. Think about it.
2 last questions.
Yes, sir.
We've been here for a while.
Yes,
now,
we've
so
been
thank
here.
you. It's been amazing. 2 last questions. One, again, back to the chiropractor thing. I'm assuming that it's a small percentage of chiropractors that practice for as long as you did, who then become medical doctors. So having been in that, having you being in those shoes, what's something that you would throw out at chiropractors listeners to this podcast that you would just have them maybe think about or consider, something that you would have never thought about as a chiropractor? Or again, we don't have to predict the future, but you don't think you would have thought about, if you did not make the transition to become a physician and spend so much time in this profession?
I think what we need to do is, again, come together as healing arts practitioners and get counsel from other physicians. Don't live in your own island, okay? No man is an island, what they say, and meaning that in the broad sense. But basically, you have to have communication. You have to have networking with other types of healing arts. One of them would be medicine. Since medicine's kind of at the top of the pyramid as far as medical practitioners and ancillary, it's good to know a good medical doctor that you trust and maybe pick their brain, start a conversation, maybe make them your friend. That might be a good thing for you, for your growth. Maybe look into it with, instead of through chiropractic eyes, just through eyes of like a child discovering something, and don't have a lot of preconceived notions, so you have an open mind approach when you're looking at other healing arts. That way you'll be able to extrapolate what is useful and absorb it, and what's not, just get rid of it. You don't need it. So it's a good way of approaching that.
And my last question that I do pose to every guest on the podcast as of the last 15-ish episodes, what is something that you used to believe, but you have fundamentally changed your mind on? Anything. Doesn't have to be in the world of chiropractic medicine.
Yeah. So,
or medicine, yeah.
Oh, gosh. I guess I wasn't really very open-minded to different philosophical thoughts. And recently, as I've become older, you get to ponder these things when you're trying to attain wisdom. And I realized that if I would have attained wisdom a long time ago, like, remember this biblical story about King Solomon, if I would have attained wisdom when I was your age or when I was in my 40s, that today my life would have been even more different than it has been with the experiences I had. So to seek wisdom in your life, and that it's all, it's available. It's just we don't seek it. Just like, biblically, I guess people say you should seek God, right? Seek wisdom also. That's one of the things that I think that I would change fundamentally, that I used to believe that it wasn't really a big thing, that I'm just, I'm seeking knowledge. So my wife is very good at reminding me that intellect knowledge is different than wisdom. So when I do something that's probably not too wise, she'll say to me, you know what? You're very smart. And what that means is I lacked wisdom in making a decision or a choice. So that's what I think I fundamentally have wished that I could have, attained a little bit earlier. I've changed my mindset to try to be more wisdom focused rather than, and I've had people in my life that talked just about wisdom to me. So I did get some good input from elder people, and I'm very fortunate that came into my life. So that way you can think about things in a little bit broader sense of things.
Dr. Scott Michaels, thank you very much. Pleasure meeting you and pleasure having you on the show.
It's my pleasure being here. And I want to thank you so much for your interviewing me and taking the time today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It was very stimulating.
Thank you very much. For me too. For me too. You were a great guest, so thank you.
All right. Thank you.
That was awesome.